Hello, this is Yehna.
And this is Jessie.
We are excited to be back with another episode. Sadly, we're back on Zoom, but still in Asia. Fun stuff. Well, we wrestled through many different questions. We wanted to invite you and elaborate more on the question of how to love with wisdom. So, welcome and join us at the
The table.
table.
Oh, I miss being able to say it in sync,
I
Yana.
know. I'm thinking that right now.
Oh, we're back to Zoom, but we've got some juicy stuff to talk about. Woohoo. It's about friendships again.
I love it.
Relationships again, because that's been something that's been on our mind lately as we're meeting new people, as we're evaluating our own relationships that have entered and have left our lives. And so we're trying to figure out like what does it mean to love well, which is kind of similar to what does it mean to show up well, but
Hmm.
we're more wanting to dive into what does it mean to love well with wisdom. Let's get started. First of all, how to love well. What does it mean to love well? And that's something that Yenna and I think about a lot, especially as special needs teachers. Of it's pretty obvious with our kids, it's straightforward. We know that each kid needs different levels or types of ways that we pour into them and love on them well. And that's pretty straightforward. But the thing is, when it comes to our friendships and translating that into loving and catering towards each of our friends differently, that's a little bit different and hard for us to do, especially as each friend reciprocates the friendship differently, too. Loving does look differently. How does it look different for you, Yana?
Ooh, for me, I think it was a huge, just a big mind shift that I needed to go through, which was very humbling and a lot of surrendering. And so, a lot of times, the question or the thought that ruminates in my mind is, okay, what if they leave me and I just wasted my time on them? Of course, there's the underlying of being afraid of being hurt, but that has been always the anthem of my mind when it comes to not just friendships, just any relationships. But when it comes to friendships, that magnified. So, with a lot of healing and honestly continuing that journey, it's the shift of instead asking the question of how can I love them in this short time the way God would and the time that God has gifted me. It's just really shifting it from okay, what are they going to give me or what can I do? It's really okay, God, what was the purpose of this encounter? How would I navigate this the way you want me to? And so, of course, that looks differently with each friend. But it really started with that shift in mindset and laying that as a foundation instead of, okay, what am I going to get out of it? Or how am I going to be better?
Hmm.
To God, what do you want from me? So don't get me wrong, because it is such a big burden and so drastically different from the way I've always thought. I still struggle with that to this day. It's so easy to just want to retreat and think, oh my gosh, but I'm not gonna ever see them again. Why do I need to try so hard? But it's like, yeah, you're not trying so hard. This is an opportune time to learn and to possibly give. And so, yeah.
Hmm. That's I feel like a pretty big deal for you, especially when you're trying to challenge yourself and be like, okay, I got to press into this and not retreat. And
Mm.
that is uncomfortable,
So true.
very uncomfortable. Because, I mean, you guys might have known people have come and gone in our lives. And so for
Mm.
us to even think about pressing into that, I feel like that's a huge reflection of how far we've come in wanting that kind of friendship and being
Mm-hmm.
willing to push aside like our hurt to step into that, you know?
Yeah.
Good stuff, good stuff. I relate to that a lot too,
Mm.
because especially after listening to the sermon, I'm like, wow, so often I base my friendship off of how much they're giving me. Like I
Mm.
adjust my level of investment based on how much they're giving me. And I'm like, I gotta really check myself on that. But sometimes the tendencies that I have is when people aren't able to show up in a friendship or reciprocate the friendship that I'm pouring into, sometimes I then overpour out of
Mm,
desperation and of feeling like I don't want to lose this friendship or it's my lack of, when really maybe they're just not in a season to be able to show up in this space. So then that's when I feel like I need to set good boundaries for myself and shift the expectations in my head and taking the time to acknowledge that it's changed and being okay that it's changed. Just readjusting, taking the time to readjust in my head mentally is very important for me to do, to just understand that new dynamic. But yeah, I feel like yeah, I need to reevaluate what loving well with wisdom means, because I
mm,
think my selfishness and feeling like I need to gain something from this or it needs to be meaningful for me sometimes takes over more than what God has intended this relationship for it to be. Feeling very convicted of that.
good stuff. Even just listening to you say that, it's like you could tell there's this mental back and tug of war that's going on. And just before we started recording, we were both just talking about like how, wow, just like we have a hard time talking about certain things, not just with the topic of friendship, with anything that's big gonna happen. Sometimes we have a hard time naming it because we're like, oh, this is gonna become too real for us to even like have to think about. And so just for you to speak that out loud, recording this and then pause, putting this publicly is, I think, huge to say that you have been coming so far in this learning journey. And I mean, myself too. So
What is this podcast? We're basically recording to hype each other up and
for
then
sure.
also keep each other accountable.
Yes. We want to cut out the accountability part, but it's there.
We're like, we named it. Now we got to actually live by it. Oops.
Okay. Erase this whole episode.
Doesn't even upload it. Forget it. We're not ready to do that yet.
Anyway.
Um, this kind of helps us with the next point of what's the measurement of a good friend. And Tim Keller really put this. Oh, I forgot to say it was from Tim
Oh
Keller.
yeah, shoot. Me too. I just realized
Guys,
that.
this is a sermon from Tim Keller about being a good friend,
Hmm.
or friendships, I think. Is that the title?
Yes, I think so.
But yeah, he gives us a good, like the four C's of things that we could possibly work on. So, Yana, can you break these down for us?
Yes. Oh, and to the application part, so which we always dread. But again, the four C's that Tim Keller really mentions, also, by the way, just our respects to him. We've really, after his passing, but we want to continue his all of his legacy and just how much he's poured into the community of believers. So I hope this also resonates with anyone who does love Tim Keller and all that he's done in his time on earth. So to the four C's, which is first is consistency, carefulness, candor, then counsel. I think with consistency, kind of the example that he gave that really stood out to me was the difference between a companion and a friend. So a companion would most likely be like, oh my goodness, yeah, just call me when you need me. Call me whenever. And I'm not saying this is bad, or neither was he trying to say this is negative, but the stark difference with when it comes to a friend is that they're already there. They're already there. It's not a needs to an end, but he's there at the end of themselves. And so they don't care so much about what they'll get out of it. It's more, I'm here, all of me is here. I'm showing up for you. And I'm in this journey. And he talks about how friendship is pain. And there's just no way out of it. Really pressing into that and being sitting in that with a friend is just an example of consistency. And when it comes to, and then next is carefulness. He really was trying to talk about how this is where we need to show up with our emotional vulnerability and exposing our hearts and to the others so that you can walk with them and to show that you really truly care about them. Then with candor, this is the part that both of us are like, but it's words that friends would need to hear, even if it possibly can hurt them. A lot of times we think because they're our our friends were like, oh no, we can't say that. We need it. What if they like leave me? And what if they think we're so mean and blah, 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 blah. But it's really, if you truly love this friend and if you truly want the best for them, you will speak out the things that possibly might be slowly destroying them, or they're being redirect them to see possibly ways they might be hurting others and other things like that. And even if that means they no longer want to be your friend, but at least you loved them well in that way. And last was counsel. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't write a clear example on this, but it was just speaks for itself. It's like with the speaking and kind of ties emotional vulnerability and candor together, but really aside from that, making sure you're walking beside them and counseling them and vice versa
Like
to
accountability.
yeah, accountability. So those are the four fours. And Jessie and I were really thinking about, okay, how are we showing up in these areas and what are areas that we need to work on a little bit more or like put a little more focus on because that's where we are weak. I'm not gonna lie, and I don't know because all of them are very difficult for me. But I
I
think
know.
consistency was the one I kind of landed on because
Mm,
like previously I talked about how that shift of mindset between oh, they're gonna leave me, so might as well I leave first. I'm not gonna
mm,
waste my time on this. So I have a hard time pressing in. I was truly the companion. It's like call me when you need me. I'll be there. I'll honestly, if you were to call me at 3 a.m., I will be there. But I would not know what got you to that point until you talk to me.
process.
So I think it's really about sitting in with the process and not sinking in the fear of them leaving, but truly just saying, hey, doesn't matter if you leave and if you can't show up, but I'll be here. Really surrendering that.
Because a lot of the times that fear is what holds us
Mm,
back from stepping into any of these four things.
yeah. So how about you, Jessie? Which one were the ones that stood out to you most?
Well, I was going to say, together as friends, especially in these past couple months, we've been doing a good job with candor.
Mm,
That's why we've had some uncomfortable moments, not gonna lie, but
yeah.
I have grown so much in that with you.
Mm,
I'm grateful that I get to do that with you because even if we know we're not gonna leave each other, there's this fear in the back of our heads because
so
of our
true.
hurt of like, well, what if this is the thing that'll make her want to not be like my friend anymore or something. There's always that what
Yeah.
if. And to be able to over and over again step into this just given me more confidence and also more trust building, which is nice to experience in a friendship. So I'd say that one for sure. But that's something that I'm not great in general of doing. So being able to step into that space with other friends is going to
Hmm.
be a challenge for me.
I don't know if this is gonna be comforting to you or anyone who has the same fear is I think for people like me, when someone is able to step into that and tell me things that are difficult, which is it feels very counterintuitive for a nine, but I then know that, okay, I'm worth it.
It's like a
I'm,
confirmation
yeah, oh, I'm
by
worth it
doing
to
it.
them. Yeah.
Mm,
And that they're willing to fight for me. And so then I'm like, oh, then I'm gonna listen.
mm.
Hmm.
That's good to hear because I think in the past, when I have stepped into that, the other person would reject me or retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're saying that no, that makes me want to be okay pressing into it.
Yeah.
So
Of
that's
course
very
it's
comforting to
uncomfortable.
know. Right.
Yeah. Of course it's uncomfortable, but it's like in the back of my head, there's almost a relief too. I'm like, oh, this person's gonna sit through it with me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that wisdom piece too of, well, what if the friend that I am hoping to step into candor with isn't in a place where they can. And I think that that's where God's wisdom comes in of like,
Yes.
you know what? I don't think this friend is ready to hear this right now. Or maybe this isn't the next step that you guys need to take. Maybe it's not taking a step forward. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
having to take a step backwards.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
wisdom is very
Wisdom
important.
is so true, which kind of introduces the next sermon that this episode is inspired by. It's the same church that Jessie's been going to, Mission, and they went on a series about loving your neighbor, and this one kind of had a little pit stop on wisdom and the book of Proverbs, because of course elder wisdom is in that book. And they kind of categorized three types of people, which was the wise, the foolish, and the scoffer, and really pressing in. Of course, something I do want to say as a quote unquote disclaimer is I'm not saying this applies very smoothly with the topic of friendship, but I think when it comes to discerning the person you might be talking to, or even self-checking where you're at when it comes to receiving correction or redirection or some sort of, what do you call that? Confronts you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Confronts you. These are things that have been such a nice backdrop to refer back to. And so, for example, for the wise, it says in Proverbs 9, chapter 9, from verse 7 to 10, that's the reference, but it says the wise loves correction. And so because when you correct them, they are willing to change, they're willing to listen. And for the foolish, they limit you and they try to correct you back. And whereas a scoffer, it's also kind of like almost on the end of evil, is that you should distance yourself, because when you correct them, they will possibly cause harm, whether that's verbally or possibly physically. And so really discerning those things, of course, hopefully you don't come across a scoffer, because that's kind of scary, but you don't know. We don't know who our audience is and the life stage you're in and who you're working with. So I think this has been such a good outline for me to refer back to. How about you, Jessie?
Yeah, I wonder, based on the health and the season that I'm in, that because I would want to say that, yeah, I'm not a scoffer, I'm not the foolish one, but I wonder, in unhealth, how am I showing up?
Yep.
Is just what I was immediately thinking to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have to sit on this because, like, yeah,
Okay.
my pride wants to be like, I'm good, but
I
maybe
know.
knowing myself and how I can get, I'm like, oh, I can see myself being corrected and not receiving that well, or trying to correct out of a place of ill intention.
Yeah. And
So very
I think
convicted.
I think when I first heard this, they kind of talk about this sermon as if to help us as the people who are listening to now to carry this into our relationships. But I couldn't help but feel so like stabbed in the heart, because not just friendships, for me, it was really family. When I heard this, I think that's when I was like, oh, my heart hurts, because I know for a fact I do not take correction very well. And the way I either shut down or fight back been very eye-opening for me, especially as I enter my young adulthood. And I'm thinking, why am I still like this? What am I so afraid to let go of? What am I trying to prove here, that I have such a hard time listening to wisdom? And so just really hoping and praying that before I can use this as an outline to refer to another, yes, that too, but first and foremost, how am I showing up in wisdom? It's been hard. And I think, okay, for those who don't know how to tangibly understand wisdom, something that helped me was the way Tim Keller kind of explained it, was how a lot of times we want to be morally correct, and we sometimes associate being morally correct and right with wisdom. But he was like, anyone can work on being morally correct. Anyone can strive, like just work out of their own strength to be correct. Don't murder, don't steal, don't blah, 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 down the line. We, as humans, we have that slight moral compass, and it's just a matter of working towards it. But now when it comes to wisdom, it's about seeking God's discernment about how to be right at the right time in the right way. Because for the same thing, for example, this is a very silly example, but in the same way, when I meet someone and I eat their, like someone cooked for me, so good. It's like, wow. And I sit down, I eat it, and it's like, taste disgusting. And then they were like, oh my God, is it delicious? The morally correct thing is to not lie. I could be like, oh yeah, that's just so gross, like disgusting. And that's me being morally correct because quote unquote, I'm not lying, you know? But the wisdom would be to say, thank you so much for this meal. I didn't lie, but I am grateful that they took the time for this meal. So I know this is such a stupid example, but that's an example I kind of go back to on the back of my head is like how to discern the situation and the heart. Of course, I'm not gonna be like over exaggerate. Like, this is so delicious and stuff, the whole spaghetti down my throat, but like really stepping into thinking, okay, God, how give me the words, please, because it tastes disgusting. That's some tangible way of how I thought about wisdom.
Mm. And we're both learning that the best way to gain wisdom is to the source,
Mm,
the Bible, taken us our whole life to finally realize this is where the truth is. It doesn't
mm,
come from talking to people. It doesn't come from any kind of whatever, like, no matter how many podcasts we listen to or sermons, like, it comes straight from the Bible. That's something that we're also trying to work on as we work towards, yeah.
takes a lot of discipline.
Wow. Baby steps, baby steps.
Mm. Well, I know this was a very heavy episode, and honestly, you know how we always start our podcast now with a question, and the reason why is because we don't have the answers. And so I really hope this would have also served as a reflection question for where you guys stand with your own relationships and whether that's friendships or family. And we will link the two sermons in our description. So really take the time to listen to it. It's really helped shift our mindset, whether it was to convict us or to comfort us in how we've discerned our past relationships and how to now learn moving forward. So I hope you guys also take the time to listen to these two and do your own reading of the word and searching of this meaning of wisdom and how to discern relationships. I think Jessie and I has really, really learned that friendships, and even Tim Keller says this, that we always put in the back burner, but for some reason it navigates so much of our relationships or is a part of so much of our relationships. So Tim Keller was like, this is actually a very sacred relationship that we need to learn about and pray about and discern. And I hope that this has served as a little jumpstart to your own research and your own reading of how to navigate these things as you guys are discerning all of that, no matter what age, really. I think because this friendship is so sacred and I truly am coming to treasure all of mine. So, I hope you guys take the time to listen to our other podcasts on Spotify and YouTube. And then we have our updates on Instagram. Thank you, as always, for listening and cannot wait to share more on our next episode. Bye.